Hey guys, it's Paradise, and it's been a little while since Elden Ring basically took the world by storm with its release back in 2022. It kind of feels like it's been an eternity of waiting for the highly anticipated expansion. Recently, we've had a bunch of previews come out from players having spent 3 hours of hands-on time with the new DLC, as well as the additional details in interviews and other sources. And we haven't played the new expansion ourselves yet, so we don't want to spoil anything for both ourselves and you. We'll only be showing official trailers and B-roll as we go through the known details, speculations, and tidbits from various previews. The game is now closer than ever to release on the 21st of June, so let's dive into everything we know to get ready for this new expansion, which I'm hoping will be truly epic. First up, it's important to know that you don't need to have beaten the full base game of Elden Ring to actually play the new DLC, but there are a couple of bosses that you must defeat as a requirement to actually play it. According to Miyazaki, the game's director, you need to have defeated 2 enemies, Mohg the Lord of Blood and Star Scourge Radahn. Radahn is found in the Redmane Castle in Caelid, while Mohg the Lord of Blood is found in the Mohgwyn Palace, which is accessible from a gateway teleporter in the consecrated snowfield or by completing White Mask Var's questline and using the Pure Blood Knight's medal. This is the only pre-requirement to actually playing it, but next is the actual entry point for this expansion, which is the cocoon in the Mohg boss's arena. This is thought to be the physical husk of Miquella and will be the entry point into the Land of Shadow, which is where this new DLC takes place. Now, speaking of the Land of Shadow, this is the new area to explore with all of the expansion content in it. The actual Land of Shadow was originally part of the Lands Between, but was severed and sealed away. It's a large area that's overshadowed by the Erdtree, and it's theorized to have been sealed away by Marika in order to allow mortality to exist. This is the place where Marika first set foot, but not much more is known about it in terms of the lore. You might be wondering how long the expansion will be. Interestingly, they haven't actually revealed a set number of hours due to the discrepancy of the original 30 hours that they estimated for the base game, which, as we now know, is widely contested and many people have played for far more than 30 hours. However, from interviews, we know that the new area is going to be around the size, if not bigger, than Limgrave from the base game. It's also the biggest expansion From Software have ever worked on, which honestly has us quite hyped. It's meant to keep the feeling of exploration that the base game had, and it's meant to be a large area that you can go and explore at your own pace and in your own way. Interestingly though, previewers have speculated that the size of the DLC is closer to around half the size and length of the base game. This would make it a lot bigger than just the Limgrave area. It's possible that Miyazaki was underselling the size, or that there might be even larger hidden areas like an underground map, which would be incredible because that experience of finding the underground areas for the first time in the base game was so unforgettable. If you are doing your first playthrough or even working through a New Game Plus run, it's helpful to know that you're not locked into the expansion area once you start it. You can travel between both the base game's The Land Between and the new expansion's Land of Shadow freely by using fast travel at any site of grace, so it's pretty smooth and seamless to explore the new area or return back without much trouble. In the new expansion, the difficulty might be a worry for you if you've grinded out the original game and now you're a super high level. Well, the expansion is introducing a new level up system that seems to build on the mechanics of the base game and looks to be inspired by Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. So don't expect to steamroll through everything instantly even if you're super powerful. In an interview with Famitsu, Miyazaki said in addition to the normal rune-based leveling system, you'll have a Sekiro-like attack power-up stat that will be unique to this DLC area. You can level this up before taking on the harder content and bosses, and it allows you to more easily experience this even in a high level range. This is further expanded on by those who played the preview, as they commented that you can find a material that is used to upgrade yourself in the Shadowlands. As you level up, you'll need more and more of these materials to keep powering up, and they will give you an increase or modifier to your attack and defense, which is speculated to go up to a total of 10 levels, giving a very substantial boost. On top of this, there's a separate material to upgrade things like your Spirit Ash summons and Torrent to your mount, meaning there's essentially whole new ways to increase your power outside of just your character level. Additionally, in the previews, the pre-made characters that the press and creators had access to pick from before playing their 3 hours were supposedly level 150. This makes it a good estimate or benchmark of where your character is expected to be when going into the new DLC area. So if you want to be safe and go off of these previews, getting your character to at least level 150 for this expansion might just be a good idea. Also, from the previews, there was impressions that the DLC is significantly harder than the main game, and this is in line with expansions in these kind of games, and due to the new Sekiro-like level up system, it shouldn't matter if your level is too high, because that new level up mechanic with the Sekiro-like levels will basically ensure that you're not going to be super overpowered in the DLC, allowing you to experience the bosses as they were intended, which will likely mean they are quite the challenge. Speaking of the bosses, we know there will be more than 10 new boss fights, and remember, usually in From Software games, an actual boss fight is more like a proper thematic battle and not one of the mini-bosses or stronger style mobs. Of course, without further official details, it's hard to know the specifics, but for a large map size like Limgrave, 10 bosses doesn't sound right unless you exclude field encounters and mini-bosses in dungeons. So we're thinking these 10 new bosses might be proper boss fights like Radahn, Rykard, Renala, and so on from the base game. From the previewers, the more than 10 main bosses are in line with this estimate, as they're set to be bosses that drop remembrances which will get you powerful items or spells, and they're separate from the mini-bosses in the smaller dungeons. Interestingly, the dungeons are also expanded on and are designed with more differences in mind, so that each dungeon is more distinct from one another and should have their own identities or iconic features, and of course the bosses or mini-bosses in them. And when it comes to taking out those bosses, we know that there will be 8 entirely new weapon categories to try out. This is 8 completely different types of weapons to try from the base game, not just the same weapons that were in the base game but with new powers and stats. Miyazaki said that the DLC will add many new weapons, new combat skills, and new spells. He says in terms of weapon types alone, 8 new categories have been added, and even players who are proficient in the main game will definitely be able to get a new gaming experience and develop new tactics. So there should be a large number of these new weapons, likely with awesome new Ashes of War, and maybe even whole new stats or status effects. 5 of these weapon types were previously revealed out of the 8, including great katanas, martial hand-to-hand weapons, throwing weapons, dueling shields, and reverse grip swords. However, with the previewers getting 3 hours of hands-on time, the last 3 categories of weapons have now been found. These include perfume bottles, light greatswords, and beast claws. Within the DLC, they're estimating approximately 100 new weapons will be included, and many will have unique abilities. Honestly, this has me extremely hyped, as the sheer amount and variety of weapons in the base game was a big part of the enjoyment for me. From finding them, collecting them, and trying them out with different builds and playstyles, having over 100 new ones in the expansion will be insane to just find them, let alone what they actually do and how different they all are. Each of the new weapon categories do look very cool in their own way, but I'm definitely more partial to the reverse grip swords, as well as possibly the light greatswords. But the beast claws look very insane and super agile, while the perfume bottles look like a very interesting weapon with a sort of spreading AoE attack to them. On top of this, we know there will be new crystal tears, and one of them should get you pretty excited because it's something that people have been asking for in Elden Ring pretty much since its release. One of the new crystal tears being added has a significant impact to gameplay according to the previewers, as it introduces a perfect block or deflect style mechanic. This means if you block at the right time just before an enemy hits you, you take no damage and reduce stamina damage, and it's meant to also power up guard counters, which really opens up new build possibilities. Furthermore, previewers have confirmed a multitude of new items, talismans, and weapons that are set to have rich lore descriptions, so there's going to be quite a lot there. The story of the Land of Shadow is largely following and expanding on Miquella. Miquella is the brother of Melania and the demigod child of Queen Marika. Miquella also has a curse that gives him essentially eternal youth, forever staying in the form of a child. But he has one of the most fearsome powers of all the demigods, a unique ability that allows him to compel the affections of others. Official details are vague, but the entry point for the DLC is thought to be Miquella's physical body in the cocoon, which he cast off in order to enter the Land of Shadows and help and shelter those who are without grace. Remember, the Land of Shadow was sealed away from the Erdtree, and so there is no no gold or grace there, and these are the types of people that Miquella likes to help. So it's quite likely that Miquella might be the good guy in this story and may even help us as the player. And with that, we need to talk about Messmer the Impaler, a boss in the new expansion that, while heavily featured in the trailers, there isn't that much known about him. In the key art, we can see him sitting on the throne of Margot the Omen King, and Miyazaki has said that this is meant to symbolize how Messmer the Impaler is equal to the other demigods and children of Queen Marika. Perhaps Messmer the Impaler is a sort of cast-away child of Queen Marika. We'll have to find out more. In the new story trailer, we could actually see Messmer leading an army, burning all in its way with flames. Perhaps his power with fire is linked to his eyes that match those of dragons and rune bears in the game, and we know that as a player we can gain the magic of the dragons, including fire breathing, but not enough is known about the Messmer just yet. He's likely going to be a boss fight in the expansion, but whether or not he's the final boss is unknown. But one thing is true, it's going to be an epic journey as we can finally dive into the DLC and learn more about the Land of Shadows, Marika, and Miquella. If you know any extra details about the DLC, do share it down below so we can all learn together, and I hope you did enjoy this, so drop a like if you did, and subscribe for more daily gaming videos, news and guides.